Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Shadow at Night, Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. And on the show tonight, CBC bias. Is it really there? Well, we'll show you some examples of it as we go along the show tonight. And the reason it's a thing today is because CBC executives have been grilled, if you can call it that, in committee by Senate and MPs for the last couple of days. So we have some video of that to play for you. You know, the interesting thing about Canadian committees, and I do understand that a lot of things get exposed in these committees. Seedy backdoor deals, billions and billions of dollars changing hands. Nobody ever seems to do anything about it, but at least it gets exposed. Anyway, the difference between Canadian committees and U.S. congressional committees is the emotion and the vigor. And let's be honest, the name calling, the drama. It's fun watching those committees that come from the United States. Those people are absolutely passionate and believe in the things they are saying, and so they say them. In Canada, even if you believe that climate change is bogus, even if you believe that a man cannot become a woman or a woman cannot become a man, you have to be very, very careful with your wording lest you get labeled as a denialist by the left-wing corporate media, by the CBC. So we're gonna play you a little bit of committee tonight, and you, of course, can be the judge. We also have some information from the Supreme Court of Canada from their website regarding a decision for leave for you Universal Ostrich Farm, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Hello, everybody. Hello, Diane, watching in Cottam, Ontario on Facebook. Derek is watching tonight on Facebook as well. Hello, Rita on X, watching in Ontario. She's also an all-access Nighthawk at shadowdavis.com. And if you are going to be joining the website, again, shadowdavis.com, just like it says at the bottom of the screen, shadowdavis, all one word.com, easy to find. After you have joined, don't forget to become a member of the Shadow at Night community on Telegram. There's almost 700 people in that group, and they're all awesome. Hello, Roland, watching in Windsor. Mickey is watching in Vancouver, Washington. Bev is watching tonight on Facebook as well. I saw a couple of YouTubers and Rumblers. Who's watching on Rumble tonight? Nutsy and Dorsa and Bylenet, World Peace, Riznan, Stop the Shit Show. I love the Rumble handles. Whatever platform you're watching on tonight, you guys, and wherever you're watching from, don't forget, like and share. Get it out there to as many people as you possibly can. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Today we're comparing Crest toothpaste to SilverSeuticals toothpaste. First, we're starting out with Crest. It's a classic, it's an original, it's what I've used most of my life. But that being said, it does have its problems. First off, the consistency is so weird and thick, and I get it's a paste, but it really doesn't spread that well. And I must also say that I'm not in love with the taste. I get toothpaste isn't supposed to taste good, but why shouldn't it? But that being said, it does get the job done. Next we have SilverSeuticals. They have 3 flavors, but today we're going with Bubbleberry. And already it smells so good. So I'm excited to see what this tastes like. The consistency is also a lot smoother, and I must say it spreads way nicer in your mouth.
This literally tastes like fruit bubblegum.
Yeah, this toothpaste was pretty good. I actually went in for seconds, and it's infused with nano silver, so it helps remineralize your teeth and keep them fresh throughout the day.
100% go with SilverSeuticals.
And here's the results. What's your favorite toothpaste?
There they are, Canada Nano Silver, awesome product, 204-808-9292. And of course, it's CanadaNanoSilver.com. And don't forget, if you are supporting CanadaNanoSilver.com, you are supporting the Shadow at Night live stream. Okay, so the first thing that I want to bring up tonight, and a lot of people have been messaging me in the past couple of days, including Maggie Hope Braun, our friend from Ontario, with Kickley, still doing a fantastic job with that. And I guess we're going to bring Maggie back on before we wrap up the show, the social media show, next Friday, because we want to hear what she's doing. She's doing a lot of important work. She texted me today and said, what's going on with the controversy at the farm? Do you want to discuss it? We didn't get the chance to have that conversation today, but I'm thinking, what controversy? Is it the Jim Kerr arrest? And I've got my own opinions on that. I'm not going to talk about it here. And then she said, no, what Pat King said. And I went, what did Pat King say? Pat King apparently did a live stream a couple of nights ago, echoing what that guy said a couple of weeks ago. The guy who had Daniel Nagase, the doctor, on, claiming that this whole operation is bogus at Universal Ostrich Farm, and they want my opinion on it. And because I haven't seen Pat's show, I can't give you an opinion. I've only seen parts of it. And so I really don't know what was said in total. I don't know if Pat covered both sides of the issue. I don't know. I don't know if he's had Katie or Karen or Dave on his show. I don't know. So I can't comment. And at this stage, I probably wouldn't anyway, because I'm trying very, very hard to keep the division out of things. Ultimately, what the CFIA and the government are doing, occupying somebody's land in British Columbia over a bogus claim is wrong. And in a free and democratic society, this is not supposed to happen. Government overreach like this is becoming endemic in our country. People are normalizing it, and that needs to stop. The ostriches, I understand, are diminishing in number. But again, there are no accurate counts. Nobody knows for sure, so we can't talk about that factually. We can only talk about that, I guess, by guessing. And that's no way to run a railroad. So what I believe is going on at the Ostrich Farm is the same thing I've always believed since the beginning of this. And that is, it's an intersection for all kinds of nastiness that's going to come with Agenda 2030 with the Great Reset. At any time, somebody could bring the police into your home and say, you're coming with us. And we're going to show you a video from the UK later on in the show tonight that will demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about if Bill C8 and C9 pass and digital ID gets introduced in Canada. It's only a matter of time. Anyway, getting back to the Supreme Court, which is what Universal Ostrich Farm is waiting on. So here's a news release came out last Thursday. Every Thursday, the Supreme Court tells us what cases they're going to decide leave on the following week. And usually it's on a Thursday morning at 9:30 Eastern. So this week they'll be deciding on Terrell Burke Whitaker versus His Majesty the King, Cynthia Prescott versus Benchwood Builders, Superintendent of Pensions of New Brunswick versus Resolute FP Canada, Anthony Archie Michael Dodgson versus His Majesty the King, Santé Quebec, I don't know what that one is, and Randy Williams versus Music and Entertainment Rights Licensing Independent Network. So Universal Ostrich Farm is not on the list. However, this list might change, as they say right here, although it rarely does. I'm sure you guys have seen this video. Ezra Levant trying to speak with the Health Minister of Canada. This has been out making the rounds on social media. If you haven't seen it, finally, somebody from the media talked to a cabinet minister in the federal government about Universal Ostrich Farm. Have a look.
For agreeing to accredit Rebel News. I very much appreciate your dedication to freedom of the press. I have a question about the Ostrich Farm. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to ask about the lawsuit because I don't want you to talk about anything that are before the courts. But there was a letter, and I noticed in the statement you talk about Canada-U.S. cooperation. I know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your U.S. counterpart, has written saying he thinks that there's some medical research value in these ostriches because they had avian flu, but then have recovered and are now immune. In fact, he's offered to do the research and even to pay for it. It seems to me that we need allies around Trump's cabinet table. And if you could throw him a bone and say, sure, Secretary Kennedy, you can study these birds, it's sort of no skin off Canada's nose. And don't you think it would be helpful to have an ally in Trump's cabinet when we're doing our trade negotiations?
Prochaine question, merci.
That's my question. Don't you think it would be helpful to have a friend?
Next reporter, merci.
Oh, you're not going to answer, Minister?
Prochaine question, merci.
I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?
Next question, thank you.
Minister, did I miss an...
Now, this reporter standing behind him is left-wing corporate media with a smug look on her face. Oh, like your Rebel News, you don't deserve to be here at all.
Answer? I don't get it. Okay, I'll sit down. I guess it's question period, not answer period.
Merci.
That's absolutely disgusting behavior by the Liberal government. Clearly, they haven't changed their policy on answering questions from independent media. I would imagine it would be the same if it were Juno News or Northern Perspective or me or the Western Standard, anybody else, independent news-wise, they would not recognize. Because the government believes that only they can recognize legitimate media sources. And that is one of the biggest problems with these left-wing nut jobs, is that they do not want to hear anything from the other side at all. They'd rather cancel it. They'd rather censor it. And that's the fight we're in. Well, one of the fights. I mean, there are plenty of them, after all, right? Speaking of Juno News, here's an article from them. CBC Grilled on workplace culture, DEI, and foreign workers at committee hearing. CBC executives facing heightened scrutiny and questions about the broadcaster's bias, commitment to diversity of opinion, and investigating toxic workplace claims. We covered the toxic workplace claims on the show last night. Here is Senator Cardoza, who's a member of the Independent Senators Group, by the way. He's not a conservative. Talking with CBC executives today regarding their bias. Have a look.
Third is bias, which we haven't talked about yet today. There is a sizable part of the population that believes that CBC is biased, that it has a political approach, that it is preachy. How do you deal with that part? Because I think that's part of the rock-solid detractor part of our population that believes you're not in touch with them. So how do you deal with those three issues?
I'll start with the last one, if you don't mind. It's a tough one. It's a tough one because, we conduct our daily news under very strict journalistic standards and practices and guidelines that, in fact, are ensuring a pluralistic approach, diversity of points of views, and fairness in our coverage. So that's our church. That's how we function. And so the notion that we are politically oriented is really against everything that we believe and the independence that we so importantly preserve, and that is protected by the Broadcasting Act and other instruments of the law. So
there are 2 or 3 people who do fact-check opposition members more than they do Liberal government members, consistently and quite aggressively. Either you fact-check everybody or you don't fact-check everybody.
Okay, and I'll let Brody maybe answer that part, but I want to go back into another aspect that you used, which was, we don't reflect necessarily what people feel is important, and that is why the local extension and going back into areas where we haven't been is a remedy to some extent. If Brody wants to address the fact-checking.
Bias, I've worked for a number of different news organizations, a number of private media. I can say that the CBC is the most accountable and held to the highest standard of any organization I've ever worked for, and I've worked for a number of them, Sun Media, the Globe and Mail, and others. We are called to defend our journalism, to defend our standards, and we are held to account by an independent ombudsman. But I hear the concerns about bias. And we take them seriously, and we talk about them regularly. And where do we need to course correct, or what is leading to that perception? I think I'd just add it is a challenge that a number of public broadcasters face, and a criticism they face around the world. We see.
So now it's all the other public broadcasters. It's not just us. It's the BBC, it's the ABC in Australia, all the public broadcasters, even the one down in the United States. What are they, PBS? All of those ones. Well, they face the same criticism too. What are we supposed to do about that?
This kind of criticism, but we're open to it, and we want to be as good as we can be.
We're open to the criticism. We're not necessarily going to take it and put it into practice, but we're open to it. In other words, you can call us names, sticks and stones. We're not changing. Look, until we actually have somebody in there, and I'm hoping that the CBC is defunded long before that. And, there's some fears there might be another election coming up very, very soon. We're going to get to that. But if it's not defunded and exists, it needs to be overhauled. Everybody in a position of power in that organization needs to be fired. And logic-minded people need to be put in place there. Completely and totally down the middle. Or else it's useless. Completely useless. Now, Some people say, well, back in the good old days when Knowlton Nash was the CBC anchor, everything was fine. We didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have access to all the information that we have access to today. So they could have been selling us a boatload of crap, and we would have had no choice but to buy it because we had no alternative sources of information. We do today. This is the difference. Public broadcasters, left-wing corporate media, private or public, it doesn't matter. Government, they understand that they're losing their grip, and the only way to get it back is through censorship, and that is what they're trying to do here in Canada. And again, we're going to get to that in just a couple of minutes. Look at this from Media Bias, factcheck.com. The CBC, bias and credibility, left center, they say. Factual reporting very high. Yeah, they do factual reporting, but it's the way they present the facts and the ones they leave out that are highly suspicious. But even with all of that, there's still left center, at least according to this particular organization. Again, that's Media Bias Fact Check. Now, there's a blogger. I don't know his name. I happened to see this floating around today, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. So this blogger put this up about 3 years ago in regards to CBC's coverage of the Freedom Convoy. He put all of these CBC stories into ChatGPT, and you will not be surprised at what he came up with.
Coverage of the Freedom Convoy is overwhelmingly negative. No, wait, it's completely negative. If you go on the CBC.ca's website and you search for Freedom Convoy, you'll find 1,740 articles. And as I made my way through, I realized how overwhelmingly negative each and every article was. And I thought to myself, am I actually going wild? There's not one single article reported by the CBC on the Freedom Convoy that's at least neutral. So I decided to pump all of this into ChatGPT to search for bias and to see if I was actually going crazy. This is what ChatGPT found. ChatGPT found an overwhelming negative bias when it came to reporting. First, there was selective reporting. Many articles focused on the negative aspects of the protests, such as arrest, breach of bail conditions, human rights abuses. Overall framing of the articles showed the protests as disruptful and harmful to the city. Many articles focused on the political affiliations of individuals involved in the protests. So what do I decide to do? I write Catherine Tate, the CEO of the CBC. I actually want to pose some recommendations. First, I think there should be a diverse editorial review process. Make sure the newsroom is filled with journalists from a variety of backgrounds, opinions, and experiences.
Hey, nice recommendations. 3 years later, what did we just see? The new CEO of the CBC and the new chief editor of the CBC saying, yeah, we're checked, man, by an ombudsman. We do have a diversity of viewpoints on the CBC. No, you don't. You most certainly do not. And if you're talking about diversity of viewpoints, meaning one of your commenters comes from Ottawa, one comes from Montreal, and one comes from Toronto, that is not diversity of viewpoint. If you want to bring on some right-wing rednecks from Western Canada and let us talk to you for a while, bring it. We love that. Without filter or edit, of course. And you see, that's the other thing. We know about CBC reporting, and so we're skittish about going on any left-wing corporate media because we know how it's going to come out. And we've had former CBC journalists talk about that at the National Citizens Inquiry just 2 short years ago. So yeah, journalism in this country is, it's a joke, really. Speaking of joke journalism, let me just throw this one up here because, hang on a minute. Okay, so this is the one. Pierre Poilievre last week on the Northern Perspective podcast was talking about the RCMP, and I believe he had mentioned them as being despicable during the Trudeau era in regards to all of the scandals that somehow managed to get right past the entire country. Even the left-wing corporate media reported on those. But now Poilievre has, well, he's not apologized, but he did walk back the comments a little bit What he said was, well, those comments were directed at the former commissioner of the RCMP, Brenda Lucki. That didn't stop the left-wing corporate media from keeping on it today during their Power Play segment on CTV. Vashi Capello's talking to former deputy leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Lisa Raitt. Watch this.
Lisa, I was thinking back today to all the SNC stuff, because that's what it brings back. And I remember how many times I was interviewing you at that time, and different, Marco Mendicino at that time. Like, it was day in and day out. I remember when that stuff was litigated, for sure. Yeah. Why do you think the comments as they came through this week garnered the reaction they did? And why do you think ultimately that statement of clarification was issued rather today?
And I would go back to saying, why are we talking about Justin Trudeau? Why are we going back there? What's the connectivity to Mark Carney? That's my frustration with all of this. The leader was grossly imprecise in his original comments, and I'll give him that. I'll give him that. If he's saying that he meant to say Brenda Lucki, fine. But he was grossly imprecise when he did that. And the danger of something like that is you end up putting offside people who vote for you. I mean, I served in cabinet with Shelley Glover, who was an RCMP officer, who I'm sure would not take kindly to comments like that in terms of the general population. I'm glad the leader came out and made a very good clarification. I think that's appropriate. But I go back to the original stuff. Why are we talking about this? You know, the voters of today, the kids who are just turning 18 and the ones who are up to age 30, they don't remember. And I would point one other thing out too, Vashi, and this is, from the bottom of my heart. I prosecuted on this issue. I was the face in terms of having all of these questions. You interviewed me many times. I was defeated in 2019. The voters didn't seem to care. And that's what you should be thinking about.
Okay, so I want you to understand something. When we talk about Pierre Poilievre as a globalist, somebody who has become meek over the past couple of years, yeah, you probably have a point. I've said the same thing. Dude needs to stand up and show his teeth again. And the likability thing, he can be likable and, fierce at the same time. Oh, by the way, this is Lisa Raitt today. She works for the CIBC, Capital Markets, and she also does a podcast for them. And this is one of the podcasts she did a couple of years ago. It's called Zero Carbon Should Be the New Norm. That's her. Conservative former deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Lisa Raitt, no longer in the House of Commons, now with CIBC. This is what Poilievre is up against. All of these conservatives from the Toronto area who are constantly pressuring him to tone it down. You got to be more likable. You can't say that stuff. You're going to lose voters. I would suggest that the reason that the Conservatives have not been able to beat the Liberals in the last 10 years, no matter who's leading them, whether it's Andrew Scheer, whether it's, who's the other guy? Aaron, can't even remember his name. Who was it? Tell me in the comments. Aaron O'Toole and Pierre Poilievre. The reason that they can't beat them is because when you come off as liberal light, people lose confidence. They don't go out and vote liberal. They just don't vote. So if you want to win an election, Conservative Party of Canada, you got to be conservative. That's all there is to it. Now, while Poilievre didn't apologize for his remarks about the RCMP, oh, and by the way, why doesn't the left-wing corporate media ever talk about the fact that, maybe the RCMP is corrupt? Maybe they do have some bad seeds in the organization. Maybe Brenda Lucki was doing the bidding of Justin Trudeau in the Liberal cabinet and not investigating the SNC-Lavalin scandal or the Aga Khan scandal. Only inquired, never actually went out and got the evidence needed to press charges. Nobody is supposed to be above the law in this country, after all, right? And what about the way the RCMP officers acted during the Freedom Convoy? Do you remember this? This is a text chain that was between RCMP members. I think it was the day of or the day after the horse trampled that older lady And there's one guy here, Andrew Nixon. You can see it. He's in the second column from the left. His name is in orange. And what he says here in this, time for the protesters to hear our jackboots on the ground. And this other one, nameless so far, just a telephone number, says, just watch the horse video. That is awesome. Andrew Nixon says, agreed. And look what the RCMP is doing right now at Universal Ostrich Farm. It's absolutely despicable what they're doing out there. That is not what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be fighting crime. They're not supposed to be occupying private land. But they are. Elizabeth May gets outsized press coverage, don't you think? For a party with one seat in the House of Commons. Maybe it's because the left-wing corporate media likes her colorfulness. I don't know. But here she is talking about Pierre Poilievre and how he needs to apologize because it's going to save his skin.
You think he should apologize? I think he absolutely should apologize, not only for saying that Justin Trudeau should be in jail, but for calling the RCMP leadership despicable. I think the RCMP needs massive reforms, by the way.
Justin Trudeau should be in jail. You see, that's the thing. How is it that these politicians are defending Justin Trudeau after we all know what he did? He interfered in a court case. That's what happens in banana republics, not countries that are supposed to respect the rule of law in a free and democratic society. It's amazing to me that these politicians are able to get away with this nonsense because of the left-wing corporate media, who are so upset about what Poilievre said about the RCMP. It didn't even occur to them to think that maybe he was right, that maybe the RCMP is a corrupt organization from the top down.
Asked about an hour ago of the Minister for Public Security, the Honourable Gary Andesangria, has he read the mass casualty report, for example? Before we go hire 1,000 new RCMP officers, are we at all interested in the findings of the most extensive investigation into RCMP negligence? The killing of 22 people in Portapique, Nova Scotia in 2020 was directly related to the incompetence and negligence of the RCMP institutionally. That report said that a 26-week course is not sufficient, and
So she agrees that the RCMP has got some issues, but Poilievre still needs to apologize? Why? He was right. He was absolutely right to call that out. Oh, he should apologize, definitely.
RCMP officers should undergo a 3-year course. It's very clear that this government is not accepting those recommendations. They're going to hire 1,000 new RCMP officers who have received a 26-week course. I think we should learn from horrors like the killings, the largest mass killing in Canadian history, when 22 people were killed in Nova Scotia, where the killer was someone who'd been reported to the RCMP for over 10 years. And they turned a blind eye. The report, if you read, it's this incredible report. Basically, the RCMP notes on those occasions were, why would a wealthy white guy beat up on a poor guy and steal his money? He's a wealthy white guy, so obviously we don't believe the complainant. I mean, it's that clear, the inherent racism in the system, that could not believe that this wealthy denturist was, on complaints from numerous people, a dangerous psychopath. They just chose not to believe it. They didn't investigate it. That's one of the reasons the Mass Casualty Commission report said they need better training. 26 weeks versus what the Mass Casualty report says 3 years. But that's not the same as what Pierre Poilievre said. He said the leadership was corrupt. The leadership was influenced by partisan interests and politics. It's very different questions. And I really think Pierre Poilievre should apologize. It also would probably help save his own skin.
Oh, my God. She completely validates everything he said. And then at the end goes, well, that's not what he said. That Elizabeth, without corrupt leadership at the top, you don't get results like you just talked about. But then again, you say they're racist. So now you're bringing in critical race theory to this whole thing. I was about to use a very foul word, and I stopped myself. This is restraint. She's absolutely screwed in the head, but most of the left is, because they're operating on these weird principles that don't really exist in the real world. And somehow Canadians continue to elect these idiots. I find it absolutely amazing. And if they keep electing these idiots, this is going to happen here in Canada. Bill C8, Bill C9. If they pass, we're going to have this. Watch.
British man has been arrested. Yes, arrested for a tweet. And his crime? A social media post criticizing Hamas and Islam. Take a look.
What, you're taking me away now?
Yes, so you're under arrest, so you're going to Harrogate, unfortunately.
You're taking me to Harrogate in the middle of the night over a tweet?
I am, unfortunately.
Is this what you signed up the police to do?
This is my role. I'm trying to be reasonable with you here. So if there's stuff you'd like to gather, I'm more than willing to allow you to gather some sort of stuff like medication, if you've got any numbers you need.
You do understand I'm going to make a maximum fuss about this free speech union.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys just doing your jobs, obviously, but your head bosses have just opened up a world of
TBN's Billy Hollowell joins us now. Billy, man, what did you make of this?
Well, the first thing I made of it is this real curiosity about what in the world is happening with free speech in the UK. This has been an ongoing issue when it comes to abortion and buffer zones and arrest for silent praying. And now you have this thing where somebody has posted something on X. And as far as we know, we have this man's story, right? We have this video. Based on what we know, and there could always be details we don't, it seems incredibly troubling that somebody would be detained by the police and arrested. And you can hear the shock in this guy's voice as he's being arrested for a meme that he shared on X. The other part, outside of the shock about the free speech, is that it seems like, according to this man, and according to even the video snippet that we've seen, that the police seem most concerned about the comment about Hamas, right? Like, that seemed to be the thing that they flagged first. They even said, well, firstly, let's start with the meme. You posted a meme that said, F Hamas. And I'm thinking that it talks about Islam, it talks about other things. While none of that should be punishable by arrest, why is Hamas the first thing that the police seem to be focusing on?
And, as the young kids say these days, the UK really does seem, quote unquote, cooked.
You see it happening here in Canada as well with these Palestine protests. Now there's a ceasefire, so you probably won't see them. There's going to be other kinds of protests starting soon, if that Soros money keeps flowing, that is. But we've seen these Palestine protests in all of the major cities across the country, and the police rarely ever arrest anybody, even if they're spotted physically assaulting somebody right in front of their faces. And you can talk to Chris Dacey of Dacey Media about that. He's out at Universal Ostrich Farm right now. So the federal government definitely is concerned. They're worried over a potential election after the Bloc and the Conservatives have made their budget demands. The budget is coming out in the next couple of weeks, November 4th. So Liberal House Leader Steve McKinnon, who tends to bluster and rant and rave and whenever he stands up in the House of Commons, he said today he's starting to worry that Parliament's two main opposition parties are signaling that the government should not count on their support for its upcoming budget. Well, we've heard that the Conservatives say, well, no, you got to take your deficit of $70 billion and reduce it to at least $42 billion. And then you have to throw some tax cuts in there. And the Bloc wants them to spend more than they're spending now. I don't know what the NDP wants them to do. Ultimately, the NDP will have the final say on this. If you count up the seats, you're talking about 169 for the Liberals. Right now, you've got 144 for the Conservatives and 22 for the Bloc, which is 166. So if the NDP decides to vote with the Conservatives and the Bloc, which you have to doubt, then we could have an election. The government could fall. Remember, it's a minority. You know that Elizabeth May is going to vote with the Liberal Party, which gives them 170. Now, the NDP is in disarray right now. They're in the middle of a leadership race, right? They're in the middle of a leadership race, which is going to be decided in Winnipeg sometime next spring. And they've got 6 candidates or 7 candidates, and you've probably only ever heard of one of them before. We're going to get to that in just a second. They've got an interim leader right now. They have no money. It's quite possible that the NDP, in such disarray, but with only 7 seats, could vote differently. Some of the NDP might vote with the Conservatives and the Bloc, claiming that they're not spending enough money, the Liberals, and some of them might vote with the Liberals. So in a 343 seat parliament, you need 172 votes to pass. I don't know. I don't think the government falls, but it's possible. And speaking of the NDP, here's the leading candidate for leader, Heather McPherson. She's an MP from Edmonton.
The government is best for Canadians. We saw what 25 New Democrats did in the last parliament with a minority government. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm not afraid of work. I know none of my colleagues are afraid of work. We're going to be pushing the Liberal government to make sure that they actually adhere to the promises they've made to Canadians, that they protect everyday Canadians. You know, I'm not interested in a banker giving tax breaks to billionaires. I'm much more interested in how we're making life more affordable for Canadians in this city, in this province, and this country.
Oh, so put your money where your mouth is, Heather, and vote with the Bloc. I can't say vote with the Conservatives, because the second you say conservative to a socialist like her or a communist like her, they seize up. They can't function. Okay, so we have a list of and the reason I pulled up the Wikipedia page here is because it's funny. Here are the people who are vying for the leadership of the NDP. So you've got a guy called Rob Ashton, and then there's Tanil Johnson. You can see her there, this one right here. She doesn't look woke at all. Avi Lewis, and then there's Heather McPherson, and I think there's 2 others here, but they couldn't even find pictures of these people. But I found it funnier that they included a list of people who turned down Rob Ashton, Tanil Johnson, Avi Lewis, Heather McPherson, Tony McQuail. Couldn't find a picture of the guy, but it was these people. No, I'm not even going near that. So the party reaches out to somebody like Charlie Angus, who's lost his mind. And he says, no, I'm totally not interested. Olivia Chow, the mayor of Toronto. Nope, no way. Nathan Cullen, former NDP MP, not interested. Don Davies, the current interim leader. Nope. Leah Gazan, current NDP MP out of Winnipeg. Nope, not interested. Wab Kinew, the premier of Manitoba. Nope. Tom Mulcair. Nope. Rachel Notley. Nope. None of them. None of the big names the NDP has got on their roster said, I want any part of that. And I find that absolutely hilarious. Besides, the last election isn't even completely finished yet. This is from the Canadian Press, published on Czech News. Unreasonable to cancel election won by a single vote, says the lawyer for the Liberal MP who won the election by 1 vote. Bloc Québécois candidate Nathalie Sinclair Degagne speaks in the foyer of the House of Commons on Parliament Hill Thursday, May 15th of this year. Why was she there speaking in Parliament? The lawyer for a Quebec Liberal MP who won her riding in the election by a vote argued on Tuesday it would be unfair to other voters to cancel the result over 1 uncounted ballot. Oh, there's more. And I would totally understand that because, it's not It's not how much you win by. It's the fact that you got more than the other person, even if it's only one more. Marc-Etienne Vienne is the lawyer for MP Tatiana Auguste, told a hearing in Saint-Jérôme, Quebec, that ordering a new election would be unreasonable and would effectively disenfranchise the tens of thousands of people who cast ballots in the Terrebonne riding north of Montreal. To cancel the election is to deny the right to vote that was expressed by these 61,115 people, he said in Superior Court. If a new vote were held, he said some of the people who cast ballots in April may have died since then, or would otherwise be unable to vote in a by-election. The Quebec Superior Court agreed to hear the case after former Bloc Québécois candidate Nathalie Sinclair Desgagne challenged the election results in the riding. She launched the challenge after a Bloc voter revealed that her special ballot was returned to her and not counted because of an error in the address on the envelope provided by Elections Canada. Auguste initially won the riding, but it flipped to Sinclair Desgagne after the votes went through a validation process. A judicial recount completed on May 10th concluded the Liberals had won the riding by a single vote, but some of the votes didn't get counted. Sworn statements filed in the case show that an election employee discovered he had mistakenly printed his own postal code on several special ballots about 3 weeks before the election day. I don't know what I was thinking. I put my own postal code down there. What? Vienne told the court that there are well-known risks to voting by mail and that by law, it's not Elections Canada's responsibility to ensure mail-in ballots arrive at polling stations. What? If it's not their responsibility, then whose responsibility is it? Vienne described the error as banal and said human error can happen to anyone and result in a few votes not being counted for a variety of reasons. These are things that happen, he said. To allow a contestation of elections on this basis doesn't seem appropriate. Yeah, it does. It certainly does. My vote wasn't counted and the person I voted against won by one vote, then I demand another election. He also said it's not a given the ballot in question affected the outcome of the election. What? It was one vote. Of course it affected the outcome of the election. This guy's out of his mind. If the judge has got any sense in this case, he's going to go, dude, sit down, shut up. We're having a by-election here. He said 3 ballots marked for the Bloc Québécois were found in garbage cans at the polling station and that they were included in the final vote tally despite not being placed in the ballot box by the voter. He suggested those votes could be discounted because their authenticity could not be confirmed, meaning Auguste's margin of victory should have been 4 votes and not 1. Sinclair Desgagne's lawyer, Stéphane Chatigny, said the 1 vote decision corresponded to a margin of victory of 0.0000016. That's insane. No decision has been reached. Hey, here's one from the Associated Press. Children's peanut allergies have plunged thanks to recent advice, a study shows. Remember all those peanut allergies? Like when I was a kid, there was no peanut allergies. And all of a sudden, when my kid was born, his buddies all had peanut allergies, like in the 80s and 90s. And I'm thinking, what? That's crazy. How come all of a sudden all these peanut allergies are popping up? Well, I think we know the reason for that. But regardless, a decade after a landmark study proved that feeding peanut products to young babies could prevent development of life-threatening allergies, new research finds the change has made a big difference in the real world. If you give them the thing that they might become allergic to and let their immune systems recognize it and learn how to fight back against it, then maybe that's something you should do. And it took them 10 years to figure this out. About 60,000 children have avoided developing peanut allergies after guidance first issued in 2015 upended medical practice by recommending introducing the allergen to infants starting as early as 4 months. Well, that's a remarkable thing, right? Said Dr. David Hill, an allergist and researcher at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and author of a study published yesterday in the Medical Journal of Pediatrics. Hill and colleagues analyzed electronic health records from dozens of pediatric practices to track diagnosis of food allergies in young children before, during, and after the guidelines were issued. I can actually come to you today and say there are less kids with food allergies today than there would have been if we hadn't implemented this public health effort. And all you had to do was take George Carlin's advice from 35 years ago.
All right. Let me tell you a true story about immunization, okay? When I was a little boy in New York City in the 1940s, we swam in the Hudson River, and it was filled with raw sewage, okay? We swam in raw sewage, you know, to cool off. And at that time, the big fear was polio. Thousands of kids died from polio every year. But you know something? In my neighborhood, no one ever got polio. No one, ever. You know why? Because we swam in raw sewage. It strengthened our immune systems. The polio never had a prayer.
Polio never had a prayer. Hey, how common is severe climate change anxiety in Canada? Well, there's a study. Researchers at the University of Alberta and Acadia University reported that about 2.3% of people in Canada experience severe climate anxiety based on a survey of 2,476 individuals published in Nature Mental Health. Among groups surveyed, severe anxiety was more common in people who directly experienced climate change impacts. What would those be? Can somebody explain to me what a climate change impact is exactly? Anybody? Because I've never seen climate change out there. And I'm out there a lot. I'm looking all the time. Climate change. I see what I think is probably cloud seeding. But climate change? What? How do you experience a climate change impact? Women, of course, younger generations, people in urban centers, those with lower incomes, and Indigenous people whose prevalence neared 10%. Respondents answered questions from a widely used climate anxiety scale. This is complete crap. That's what this is. That study is complete and totally bogus. But they publish it as fact. You see, that's part of Impact Canada, the Canadian Nudge team, which is part of the Privy Council. If you guys haven't looked it up, please go ahead. Calgary's got a new mayor. His name is Jeremy Farkas. Now, there's going to be a recount there because the amount of votes he won by was within the margin of error, they say. So this guy apparently is one of us, and we can go through his history. He was a councillor from 2017 to 2021. On his first day serving as councillor for Ward 11, Farkas declined the pension that the mayor and councillors receive. He also declined the transition allowance afforded to him. He also vowed to oppose the city's new Southwest Bus Rapid Transit line. What else here? 2018, he faced some criticism for being the only councillor to vote against a motion directing city staff to draft a new parental leave policy for city councillors on grounds that taking time away from city council business would be a betrayal of the constituents. Absolutely. He voted against, the only councillor to vote against the approval of the Calgary Green Line. He had a complaint filed against him by the Integrity Commissioner for advertising in wards outside of his own. One of two councillors who voted against a pilot program allowing alcohol consumption in public parks. The motion passed anyway. In September of 2021, a bylaw was proposed for proof of COVID vaccinations for certain types of businesses. This was to further support business owners in applying the provincial health measures and encourage more people to be vaccinated during a state of local emergency. And Farkas was the only member of council to vote against the bylaw. It passed 13-1. I think Calgary elected a good one. Now, it looks like we've got a problem with the BC Conservative Party. Another problem. This is a story from yesterday morning from 7:23 a.m. Further change may be afoot in the BC Conservative Party. The MLA for Penticton Summerland, Amelia Boltby, took to social media late Sunday night and said she'll be making an important announcement on the steps of the BC legislature Monday morning. Let's see if she actually quit. Yeah, she did. She quit. She quit. CKNW host Joss Johal offered a prediction on X and added the pressure has been mounting on leader John Rustad to step down. This move will only intensify calls for his resignation. Okay, so why did she resign? Let's go up a little bit here and see if we can figure it out. Amelia Boltby announced she'll be stepping away from the party. If John Rustad was serious about caring more about the conservative movement than his own ego, he should have gracefully resigned when the membership scandal emerged, Boltby said on the steps of the legislature Monday morning. So that was the scandal that happened back in the spring when they had their AGM in Nanaimo, I think it was. And that's the scandal that led to all of those MLAs leaving the party. Instead, Dallas Brody and others. Instead, he told us he will cling to power by all means necessary. He's invited me to get the F out, and I don't like it, and I've taken him up on that offer, and I suggest you do too. Boltby said that while she joined the party because of her belief in Rustad, the loss of confidence has been a slow process. I can't ignore the fact that it's almost 7 of us in a row that he's kicked out, driven out, or fired. He's made it very clear it's not okay to ask questions, and I don't think people who have nothing to hide do things like that. Whoa, this guy. And so John Rustad responds to Amelia Boltby leaving the party by suggesting she has mental health issues. Is this guy out of his mind? He's got to go. He's got to go. Speaking to media following Boltby's announcement, during which she'd called for his resignation, Rustad said he has no plans to step down. Rustad also said he has concerns about Boltby's health because he'd seen her in tears. Well, staff are telling me she's very confused, and I had some concerns. I mean, she's had some issues in the past, and I tried to do everything I could to support her in whatever those issues may be. Are you freaking kidding me right now? That he would say that publicly? That is absolutely disgraceful. Oh my God. If you live in BC, never vote for the BC Conservative Party ever. Vote for One BC because they're the real ones. They're the real conservatives. It's amazing. There's an AM Alberta rally coming up in Edmonton this weekend. They're expecting 10,000 people. This is Alberta Independence. It's being put on by the Alberta Prosperity Project. And Chris Scott is a member of the APP and a spokesman for the APP. And here he is. This is a great speech that Chris came up with. Here he is a week ago or so at an APP rally in Edmonton.
Is not broken. The Constitution is not broken. None of it is broken. It is operating exactly as it was intended to. When Clifford Sifton gave that speech in 1904, he meant what he said. We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the province enrich our lives, build up our factories, and contribute to our prosperity in every conceivable way. And we've seen that from then until now. The West has been treated as a resource colony. We had to sell our products only to the East and only buy implements from the East. Some of that stuff continues to this day. And none of those things have changed, except for in the rare case where somebody, just a normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday guy like me, or my friend Rick Strankman, do something to stand up against it. So Rick took a couple bags of grain to the United States, sold them, and was arrested, went to jail. And that's how we had reform in agriculture, and we got rid of the wheat board. Somebody had to make a sacrifice. I peeled the onion of the problems that we have back, and I kept looking, and I thought, if I just get a little bit deeper, I'll find the solution and we can fix everything. And I came to the conclusion that the only solution is an independent Alberta. And I went very public about that. We have a lot of I call them closet separatists. We have a lot of closet separatists in this province. People who know that we're being treated unfair. They've felt it for years. People who know that the only solution is an independent Alberta, but they don't speak up and they don't say anything because of this stigma that being a dirty separatist is taboo. Well, what's taboo about wanting control of our future? What's taboo about realizing that when you're part of a system that taxes you, governs you, makes laws for you to follow, and there is no way by which you can change those things, what do we call that kind of a system? Sorry, did you say democracy? Did anyone? It's an illusion of democracy. It's a facade. That is tyranny. And it's intentional because if you go back to that speech Clifford Sifton gave, what was our purpose? To enrich those in the East. Now, we've been doing that for a long time. We've been paying lots of tax, our equalization's unfair, all those things. The feds are blocking pipelines. We've been harping about this stuff since Harper, actually since before then, since Trudeau Sr. But it's only recently that we're filling rooms like this and putting almost 300,000 people on a database with who intend to vote yes on the question of secession. Actually, it's probably going to be a no, because the question that's going to get there first is, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? And I'm going to say no. What's changed? Are we paying more money? Well, a little bit if you account for inflation, because our dollar's tanking and our country is on a very steep decline. Our trajectory that we're on right now, it's not going anywhere good. And unfortunately, there's lots of examples, even from recent history, that show when a country is in this situation and your dollar does this and your government does this and your social policy does that, you go to a place where you're burning your money and eating zoo animals. We just saw that in Venezuela. Now, I use that as a very dramatic example of what could happen, with a very, very strong warning. If you think that it can't happen to you, or if you think that it won't happen to you, and you let that prevent you from being involved and making sure it doesn't happen, it will happen. Because those who want to prosper and profit off of your submission, they will not stop. Ever. So this isn't just Alberta needs to rise up and free itself from the shackles of a federal government that treats them like a resource colony and doesn't listen to them. This is more than that. Much more than that. Do you think it's appropriate to sit on our hands while other people get involved and take away our children's future? Do you think we should not speak up because we're scared that our neighbor is going to call us a dirty separatist? I don't. And there's been a toll, but it is worth it.
For anybody who is scared to speak up about what you know is going on all around us, it's time to stand up. And it's time to speak out. It's time to have these difficult conversations. And I don't care if they call you whatever, denialist, racist, misogynist, racist, whatever. It doesn't matter. Not anymore. You are fighting for something that you believe in, and these people are trying to take everything that we've ever known for our entire lives away from us and away from our children and our children's children. And by the time we get to that generation, those kids will never know what freedom looks like if we let this happen. I believe ultimately we're going to win this thing, but it's going to take effort from everybody. And yeah, there's a price to pay. But as Chris just said there, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Big rally this weekend in Edmonton at the Alberta Legislature. And here it is again. Go to the Alberta Prosperity Project.com for more information. They are doing bus rides in from all over the province, from Grand Prairie, Medicine Hat, Okotoks, Fort Mac, Southern Alberta, Calgary, Red Deer, Bonneville, Drayton Valley. It's all on the website. They're charging for a bus ticket, and that's about it. They want to see you there. Kerry Lambert messaged me today from Chris and Kerry Show, and he said, we're expecting 10,000 and hoping for 50. That would send a very strong message, and I tend to agree with that. That's it for the show tonight, you guys. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Part 2 of the Tory Says CIA infiltration into our society video is coming up in the extension tonight for All Access Nighthawks at shadowdavis.com. If you're not a member yet, I suggest you go and become one, because this show is going off social media in 9 days and will exist on the website only. So I'll see you there in 2 minutes. For the rest of you, I love you all. I appreciate you all. And I will catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another one. Shadow at Night live stream brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com. Good night.